Amandha Vollmer.
Hi,
Welcome,
Eric. Thanks for having
Amanda.
me. Thank you.
Thank you for taking time out of your astoundingly busy schedule to speak to Planet Waivers here. And I understand you're a holistic practitioner, a graduate of Canadian Naturopathic College, which I had never heard of, and I know you to be a helpful person who actually is able to assist people in getting results. So, if there's anything you want to add to that before we tackle some of this challenging subject matter, or if you're good.
Yeah, no, it's just important if people don't know, who I am or where I come from, then, people appeal to authority all the time. They want to understand, what kind of background you come from when you're going to speak on specific topics, especially topics of their health or something where there's an expertise involved. So that's a reason that we go to school. It's the reason we're continually learning, is so that we can help others have some trust and some confidence in things. And actually, the handlers use that to trick a lot of people.
Yes, they do.
So you actually have to plumb the depths of the training and the knowledge and how it's been used. But I'm very seasoned in all kinds of eclectic practices. And yes, I graduated from CCNM, Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. I am unlicensed, but graduated and have been helping people for a very long time. And, I'm an herbalist, a wildcrafter, a researcher. I wrote a book on DMSO, so I'm a published author. And I make a lot of well-crafted medicine, and I share the medicine. And I ensure that we have, our folk medicine restored, which is one of the main things I'm working on constantly. And some of the easier things that we can do to rebalance our health rather than run into a system that's hell-bent on our death and destruction. So that's really my background in a nutshell.
So as a point of beginning, you may know that part of my background is that I have covered toxins for many years. PCBs, dioxins, Roundup, all of these corporate manufactured chemical toxins that create a lot of the health problems that we have. And the story of those toxins is that there's two parts to it, really. One is that you have the government constantly telling everyone how safe they are, constantly. Don't worry, we're at the safe level. There's no problem here. It's good for you. Put it on your Wheaties. And then, no matter how bad the stories get about consequences and results, people seem to not really care very much about the risk associated with exposure to these chemicals. So I am used to the government lying and people not caring. Then one day, in March of 2020, I woke up and suddenly everyone was concerned about this one thing, to the exclusion of all else. And the government was suddenly in this reversal of saying, danger, 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 Will Robinson. And I was very confused. I had to reorient myself here in the midst of this. What I'd like to ask you about, though, is the way that the real things that jeopardize our health work and what we can do about them. Right?
Well, yeah, that it's social engineering, of course, and propaganda, and downplaying dangers and bold-faced lying and manufactured science and ghost-written science and paid industry and revolving door industry and, money laundering and child trafficking. There's all sorts of things going on as to why we have a problem with toxins in our environment.
Yes.
And of course, I guess it's the fault of our the Pollyanna part of us that just wants to make believe that things are okay. And I have I have a quandary and a challenge when I think through these situations, because on the one hand, I want people to believe good things because I want the energy of manifestation of imagery to be towards good things, I don't really want a lot of these people to be useful idiots because they're a danger to themselves in a sense when you're not mature enough spiritually, right? So in a way, they just need protection from the wolves while they kind of come out of their slumber. And that's what I feel like our jobs are to try to protect them and to direct them well out of their cult programming, that's okay, or that poisons in your Wheaties or whatever are just totally, it's okay because my government industry is looking out for me and I want to believe that, right? But then not seeing the criminality of the continual scapegoating onto new scary boogeymen and pass the patsy over to something that you could never prove really exists. Actual virologists can't even prove really exists. And it doesn't matter because you have PR behind it that froths up enough drama and intrigue and feeds on people's fears and anxieties that you can manipulate all kinds of situations. And that's the problem to the sleepers. They don't see that is real. They don't understand that these are very bad wolves. Actually, that's kind of an insult to wolves, but for the analogy, right? So this is where we're at. We have this buffer of people who do see what's happening and are very frustrated and also very angry and very insulted in a lot of ways too, because it's not like it's only been a few minutes to sort this situation out. There's a lot of evidence to be seen. So we know that those who can't see literally can't see. And are we going to punish people because they literally can't see? They're their own punishment. So all we can do is try to help where we can, right? That's where I've come to with the whole division situation of people who just don't have the wherewithal to come out of the illusion that they've been spun,
Yeah, and it's a complicated illusion because a lot of it relates to our relationships to our parents and whether that material is resolved in any way or even close to it, because the government is in loco parentis. The government is the stand-in. And so this was best described, I'm not sure you've heard this, I circulate it a lot when I'm in a group environment like we've been in. The psychologist commenting for architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, where they talked about the obstacles to people seeing this. And the most important one is that people often believe that the government protects them and is honest. It's a very powerful projection.
Absolutely. And so many people are involved. So this is when you have such large government, which is large, it's bloated. It's bloated and you have a lot of offshoots. So it's a mob, right? And it's a powerful mob because it's been able to make alliances with all sorts of individuals who are mob-like as well. And that means you can't just shift your government because this is a corporation with handshake deals with tons of other corporations. Even that we think of it as a government is sort of wrong, really, because we've lost that idea quite a while ago with, I think, the third bankruptcy, and the rewriting of the entire system through corporate buyouts, right? So I don't think people know much about history or anything. And of course, you have to have enough gumption, motivation, intelligence, and wherewithal to actually figure these things out. So not everybody is going to be able to do that necessarily if they don't have the right skill set or resource pool or, financial situation. There's all sorts of barriers to actually figuring these things out that the enemy's put in front of people, right? But I like to see it as, okay, this is a maze. We're in a challenge and we're meant to achieve something in this life. And there's suffering and challenges put in front of us so that we can try to overcome and achieve them. And we aren't meant to get stuck. in one level. We're meant to always achieve into other levels. And so I think we will eventually come out of this situation, because just by understanding some level of the law or design of this place that seems to have a pattern.
Yep. There is a pattern. And I think that the dissolution of national sovereignty through the internet, that's really what broke down the borders and allowed these multinational, allegedly non-governmental organizations like the WHO and the WEF to essentially become the super governments, is invisible to most people and would not be something they thought even mattered.
Mm-hmm. Or thought that was good, that UN, UN, obviously, right? Yeah, they care.
Friendly looking flag.
Yes, and they help, and that's what they do, and they care about equality and peace and da-da-da-da-da. But this is how you're going to tell it. Yeah, exactly.
They take you to the UN as a child. Here, if you're in New York in the school system, you go to the UN and you see how wonderful it is, and you see the translators, and look, all the different languages and all this stuff. Yeah. And then when you ask yourself how the world went from essentially being a free place on March 1st, 2020, to having half the world population under lockdown 30 days later. 30 days later. In 30 days, they put half the world under house arrest. How did that happen?
Yeah, it's very powerful when you think about how they must have orchestrated that. And the amount of planning that went into that is quite impressive. And really, the mark of an artist is that you don't see the paintbrush strokes, right? And so they did, we see it. We can see it. We have the eyes. But if you were just not really, if you didn't have good eyesight, you'd be like, whoa, you didn't know. It seemed real. It's been programmed into our movies for how long? 70s, 80s, I remember watching breakout films and viral disaster films and monkeys are the problem and give us disease propaganda. And they've been feeding it to us, preparing for this for a long time. They got plans.
Well, and you don't need to, movies are part of where you can see the plans, but then you look at the chronology of pandemic exercises. You look at look at what's going on in 2019. Crimson Contagion and Event 201 are going on all through 2019. Perfectly well documented, and they go back and back and back. I just learned about Clade X. Clade X, and that's the name of the software that was used to Kraken 2. Kraken 2 is clade exclusion software. They're coding this right into their names. It's not even, you don't even need to look too hard. I have a client and reader who assists people with deep trauma. And I made a kind of a passing comment about how the moment there's cohesion, there's the perception of a conspiracy. J.P. Sears once made a joke, the conspiracy theory known as a timeline. So I've been because I'm the day keeper of COVID, right, with my timeline. Right, I can tell you exactly what happened on any day.
Wow.
Sure. Well, it's 185 pages of chronology that ends at the end of 2020. So we're finding this on a daily basis. My client called me up and said, that's exactly right. People are so fragmented that when they experience cohesion in some form, it seems to violate their reality, and they immediately perceive it as conspiratorial. The chaos is much more comforting to them.
Interesting.
And I thought that was very insightful. She kind of picked it up from me, but refined it and handed it back to me. So I'm working with that. And yeah, I handed someone a print copy of the chronology, and they said, wow, this seems so conspiratorial. I'm like, well, basically just the product of classical investigative reporting. It's merely a
Mm-hmm.
chronology. It's not even anything that special. But in 2022, to put things in order is special.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I bet. And you're right. I'm still contemplating, as you mentioned that, because I always like to contemplate all these sorts of things. That's
You
what I
will
do
do.
over
Well, we
periods
can
of
slow
time.
down the movie here. I'm curious what you're contemplating.
No, just
Because
the conspiratorial psychology, conspiratorial psychology. I mean, that's its whole art, and a total art in and of itself, because um, it comes down to trust or distrust. It comes down to a lot of past exposures, belief systems, projections, fears. There's a lot there. So anyway, it was interesting because that's where my mind went.
well, I mean, would you agree that sickness is a form of chaos, toxic chaos?
Yeah, and ultimately, sickness, the chaos is the part of the cleanup, because you can't really, if you have a bedroom full of your clothes on the floor and old food or some sort of mess, it is in chaos already. So that
Mm-hmm.
is a form of sickness. But then when you go to organize it, it can become more chaotic before you get it organized, right? Or even when you have to unpack something
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
to put it away, it can become increasingly chaotic, but your end goal will be harmonious. So yes, and also the healing itself can be chaotic. So you have to know the difference. A good healer will know the difference.
Yes. Well, there's that healing crisis where things get worse. They may get worse before they get better. I'm just thinking psychologically and spiritually, though, that for I think a lot of people, the chaos represents a comfort zone. That,
Oh,
for example,
that's a
they don't have
trauma.
to challenge anything. They don't have to challenge anything.
Yeah, that's a trauma response. The trauma, so there's a familiarity that is safe, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
either some sort of dissociation or some sort of familiar pathway, neural net, as they call it, right? Familiar
Yeah,
road.
like a limbic pathway
Yeah, yeah.
that's
Um,
acclimatized to that.
right. And it hits and it's familiar enough, and that's enough to feel that I'm okay, even though you're not really okay. But
Mm-hmm.
you'll take that level of okay because you can control it, or you think you can.
But I think that the idea that a cohesive accounting of events is itself threatening is a
Mm-hmm.
very interesting thing. And
Mm-hmm.
the, the we need to sort this all out.
Maybe it's an overwhelm as well. It can also be quite overwhelming to senses. There's a bunch of input that could overwhelm an individual, and then that's again another default self-protection mechanism in a way.
Oh, I think that the game plan, sorting it all out for the last 2.5 years, it's clear that the game plan of the COVID manufacturers was to utterly overwhelm the world 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there would seem to be absolutely no cleaning this up, no figuring out
Yeah.
what actually happened.
Yeah, it's like making a huge ball of string and really getting lots of knots in there where and then that's what they are working on. And also the chaos, the shifting of patterns in your life, that's very traumatic. Your day-to-day patterns and your habits are your safety. Then boom, something just throws your entire scheduling and patterning away. That's very traumatizing. That's an act of war on the people to do something like that. There's going to be casualties. In fact, I have a paper that has all the casualties laid out quite fine, expressing that this was a testing pandemic. So it was all just in the PCR testing system. It had nothing to do with anything real, and that they could prove that with the graphing and the data properly without, obviously skewing it to somebody else's ideology. And that also you could see that they knew ahead of time the destruction of just the pattern destruction, if, like the people who have had job losses or a change in their routine and the schools closing, and just those things alone, the amount of death and destruction that it actually costs in lives was was already more than doing their closure methods. And they knew that, and they went ahead with it anyway. Even it was like something ridiculous, like 50-fold more death to shut things down and restrict movement and impose than to not, and let things, even if you believe there's some sort of virus, let it run its course. Those were the statistics that was presented before the decision, and they chose to do it anyway. So that means all of these organizations that participated in it are mass murderers, because they already knew that this amount of people would die. And they voted for that, had nothing to do with protection of life. So that document I find very
which was that? I don't know this one.
I will pull it up for you and I will give it to you. And it's a study done that it was a testing pandemic. I don't have it.
What's the date? Well,
Reese, I don't know. I don't have it.
They knew. One of my articles forthcoming is what they knew on December 1st, 2019. Mm-hmm. And one of the things they knew on December 1st, 2019 was that the PCR would create 100% false positives. Mm-hmm. The CDC had already documented 3 false outbreaks by 2007, all caused by the use of the PCR. Yeah, so they had the perfect tool.
They already had that one in their pocket. They had that one in their pocket from fake HIV,
Yes.
Yeah. They that's what I'm saying. They've been on this a long time. They have big plans. Okay, I found one of the graphs from I'm actually going to present this research again. And also it's called runaway PCR testing, or they talk about runaway PCR testing in that article. So I will send it along to you, and then you can put it in the description so people can read it, because I think it's really important to understand that this is major criminal activity going on here.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's on a level that people have a hard time reckoning. But I have found it interesting has happened in my conversations with people. Basically all the people in my community understand that I'm a diligent, responsible journalist who's been around this neighborhood 33 years covering real things. Yeah. And now when I tell them the story of what I think happened, and they read my Don't Look Back article, which accounts for all the events of January of 2020, or most of them, now they say, why? They don't say, nah, this can't be true. Now the question is why? Mm. And I think that's progress. To look at the effect and ask for a motive is progress. Yes.
There's a lot more of that going on. That's for sure.
Yes.
And I mean, you have to continually damage. This is a goal, to damage as many as possible, as quick as possible, but also set in seeds of later destruction too. So it's both actions, but people are seeing that it's, the death rates are ridiculous. I mean, just what the coffins for children went up some 300% or something, absolutely astronomical. I mean, come on, it doesn't take too much looking to realize that there's massive amounts of death that's come from these shots already. So it's working. Their plan is working so far. Also, of course, when you do placebo, then you get people who will discount the death. I find this psychology very fascinating to me, like discounting death, brush it aside because you didn't personally have symptoms of the thing that killed that other person. I find that very warped, like as if it couldn't do that, or then it's fine because it didn't hurt you personally, so you're good, right? I mean, And death by the death by vaccine is okay. Death by COVID is not okay. Well, not okay.
Look at all these people. Okay, I say, look at all these people that were killed by the vaccine, and they say, but how many people did it save? And I say, well, none. So, well, you don't know that. It saved millions and millions of people. So, okay, so who sacrifices their child so that your child can live? That's not medicine.
Mm-mm.
That I'm going to sacrifice my child so that your child can live, unless I consciously sign up for an uncontrolled experiment of some kind. I find that logic incredibly warped and insensitive. It's new variants on Holocaust logic.
Mm.
I mean, you have to go to the scene of the Holocaust, which I've done several times, to realize what it meant to be in denial of that, or to pretend that it was somehow okay because we had to get rid of all these undesirables, or that the stench was a rubber factory and not a crematorium, and the head games in Germany go on to the present day.
Oh, I mean, the problem is this, is that when they murder, they don't actually discriminate, believe it or not. They make it look like they discriminate because they'll segregate and they'll do events, but really they don't give a shit who they kill, because the idea is to kill as many as possible. So the genocides, of which have been so many, we can't even, probably so many to the point where they've just erased them from the history books, and we don't even flipping well know how many mass murder, situations have been had. Yeah. Because they're ritual killers. This is where people can't seem to understand who the real core problem is, like who these people are at their core, their beliefs in their cult, what they do, and it's a hard place for people to go, but they worship the old gods, and they do sacrifice. That's how they operate. They do black magic. That's what they do. That's their thing. Yeah. And it's, so they need the bloodshed to fuel what they're doing, because they don't have divine support. So they're not going to be in alignment with what's the goodness that's meant to be here, or supporting life and creating loving, gentle spaces. It's not what they're about.
No, not at all. And yeah, and most people do not care to look at history. I've just been a journalist long enough that I've looked at the background of every war that I've ever written about, and you find it just gets worse. I mean, look at the massacre of Vietnam, which is war on the South and war on the North, of war essentially on everyone. Korea, they completely flattened Korea. This is just ritual killing. There was no need to flatten Korea. There was no need to completely contaminate Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, all in a few short years, claiming to be doing wonderful things. And then it just morphs right into Nicaragua, El Salvador, East Timor, one after the next, in just this eternal, killing machine. I don't blame anyone for not wanting to look at that.
Oh yeah, there's definitely not. I don't feel like blame for that, for sure. And sometimes I'm kind of envious of the people who stroll through life without knowing any of this stuff.
Yeah, who feel exempt and they're like, whatever. I gotta take care of my kids.
Well, that's why I'm like, you know what? You guys live your best life. Go be in the illusion. We'll have our world that we're doing and building, and then we'll protect you from yourself for as long as possible, and become the adults that you guys need. That at least, if you were a child of abuse, right, then at least if you started to figure out that one of your parents was doing that to you, or worse, both, and then you had an option to choose a different parent that was going to assist you or support you, and at that some point in your maturity, you'd make that decision. So I hope that we could become the parents so that those children who still are attached to that system will feel like they have a better choice for themselves, and then begin to do their own inner growth and awakening process that feels, ready when they're ready.
Yeah. And There's a wonderful book called A General Theory of Love that came out around 2000 that talks about how difficult it is to, you know, recreate the deeply embedded limbic pathways that are associated with abuse, and why we tend to keep reliving things over and over again that seems a lot like karma. It may run in parallel to karma. Mm. It may be genetic, it may not be genetic, but there is emotional imprinting of these things that make it difficult to find someone who loves you if you've come out of an environment where everyone just seems to hate you. Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't have especially friendly or supportive parents, but I became very good at finding surrogate parents. Mm-hmm. My godmother, Aunt Josie, Josephine Nicastro Sharp, laid that down for me. There was always someone who just simply loved me, mm-hmm. and I really liked her. She was always nice to me. There was always chicken and rice on the table when I came over. It wasn't that there was anything lavish about her treatment. It was that there was food. I have celiac. There was food that I liked to eat, that I could eat. When I came over, I was given dinner, and that was it. No strings attached. Mm-hmm. And so she was around for the first 30 years of my life, and I learned that there could be generous people, and I learned how to receive the generosity of others. This is a tremendous gift. This is why she is my godmother.
Yes.
Other people do not have this. They don't have this, and can become very suspicious of those who extend a loving hand.
There you go. Yes, well said. And that's offered. I see that usually offered. I was offered same things. There's my daughter's father ghosted her right at the beginning of the pandemic. We don't know why. Oh, yeah. And it was very, very hard, obviously. But nature, God, there's always an offering of that need to be met, as long as you can see it or it's not interfered with. You're right. There can be karma involved and all of those things alongside of it. But I still see grace offered. Mm-hmm. Grace is usually presented, and then you can choose to take it. So you took that beautiful surrogate unconditional love experience, and you know that there is unconditional love, and it's okay to receive it. It's okay if someone's offering to you. It's all right to question whether their intentions are malicious or not. There's a lot of narcissists out there. They're very giving. It's okay to question it, but you don't stay in the cynical nature like that. You learn to trust yourself. And then that trust is what attracts the correct trust in your reality.
Well, yes, I've said this and written this probably 10 times in the horoscope column, that your trust is based on, trusting anyone is based on your ability to trust yourself, because you have to make the assessment.
That's right. And it's your imagination making the assessment. And, I'm glad that you're a professional with astrology. And I was actually thinking earlier today that I don't feel we take astrology seriously enough when we're looking to try to know who we are and develop who we are. It helped me tremendously. I mean, I started studying as one of my earlier arts as a child because mm-hmm. I wanted to know who I was. And it was a launching off that helped me question, is that me? Am I like that? Is this my nature? Is this where I came from? Mm-hmm. Is this what I do? Do I do these things? and so it got me self-aware at a young age. Am I really like that? Do I have mm-hmm. this type of behavior from time to time? Or, is this influence that they're telling me is happening right now? Do I really sense that or feel that? And for me, my experiences as a natural scientific mind, like a thinker, a pure curious mind, I found it lined up all the time for me. And it became mm-hmm. very validating to me as a system to help me navigate this place. mm-hmm. And this is something, if people feel lost, they can find information to at least use for their own self-reflection and development, which is usable, workable, and continually supportive, really.
In the right hands. Unfortunately, the quality of astrology is degraded incredibly badly on the internet. and where now anyone can just basically hang out a shingle, and it has ceased to be, because the internet is tribalizing and destroys literacy. The amount of literacy needed to be an astrologer. These are my astrology bookshelves, and that's my homeopathy and herbalism bookshelf. Those three. So there's 1, 2, 3 are mostly astrology. 1, 2, 3 more astrology, and then those are herbalism and homeopathy on the far end. You have to be literate to do this. You have to have the knowledge of the books, but also the forced inward seeking that the books give you. You can't be tribal reading a book.
No.
You have to form your own relationship to the author and to the subject matter and be changed by it. And I am finding the state of astrology largely terrifies me. It's why I keep doing it, and why I'm so happy that I'm able to do it as well as I can do it, and seemingly as effortlessly as I can do it. But it is a phenomenal tool for gaining self-knowledge, as long as it is not used to turn you against yourself.
Absolutely.
And this is the problem with the power-hungry practitioners, is that they can gain power over their subjects by turning them against themselves. And so I think that anyone claiming to be an astrologer has to be put through a test of integrity, and you have to understand where they're coming from. It's not just simply believing what you read or what they say. There can be not the meekest whiff of power in it. There should be absolutely no power,
because they can manipulate through the interpretation of the information, right?
Sure, it's very easy to do that, and to come up with an enlightened reading of an aspect is, I have an ebook called Astrology Revealed, and in that I gave the example of Venus square Mars. So I took this. I have a whole shit ton of books here, especially early 20th century, mid 20th century, moving into the more humanistic astrology phase, led by Dan Rudyard, psychological astrology. And I looked up Venus square Mars in about 10 different books, and I quoted all the hellacious things they said to people who have this aspect. You can't lay that on your client. And this is books that are vetted by editors, but what the fuck do the editors know?
Yeah.
So when you find Venus square Mars in a client's chart, you got to help them figure out what to do with that, how to work with that, how to bring out the very best in that, what that really is about for them, how to contextualize it, how to frame it. This is not easy. It's almost impossible to be qualified as an astrologer. But it's similar. I did an article called "The Folk Art of Therapy," about true therapy, not psychology and drugs and psychiatry and this stuff. And I finished the article and thought, who's qualified to do this? It's the same with what you do. It's the same with what homeopaths do. It's very hard to actually intervene and not harm people in the process. So that's my caveat.
Well, that's why
astrology is wonderful, but be careful.
Yes, be careful. But again, you're using all these tools to manufacture in yourself or engender in yourself a really good sense of integrity and intuition, and what resonates to you, and why would that resonate? Is it because you're resonating with the trauma? Is it because you're resonating with something that feels true to you? It's a way to dig in, but I when you're seeking other practitioners, you have to know what your goals are. If you go out and you just say, help me, help me, help me, you do that, then you could be fishing in a lot of wrong energy. You want to be at least in a place where you are working on yourself, or you're trying to assist yourself, first, if you can. And then find out the needs and then express those properly, then you're going to be in a better position to get the help that you need, rather than this thing that people do, which is reactionary. It's so it's an emotional reaction, and there's all kinds of repercussions for emotional outbursts. Because it's very powerful, but it can create chaos. Maybe not the chaos that you want.
No, not the chaos that'll turn you into an artist necessarily, but
right.
I learned a lot from my first homeopathic intake. When sitting there with Katie Bray, and she did something that no one had ever really did, which was ask me relevant questions for 90 minutes.
Yes.
In very subtle stuff. Homeopathy is like, is it worse when you sleep on the left or on the right? Mm-hmm. Are you constipated when you think about your mother or not? Kind of things. And there has to be this objectivity to the intake process. So even people just write to me casually, they want a reading, I will immediately put them through a self exploration process and keep handing it back to them until they can explain to me what they're actually looking for.
Oh yeah, my intake form is 10 pages long. And I actually have an addendum and a couple other food diaries and things in there too. So
I don't do
they're
that.
They're going to be getting self-reflective.
You kind of have to, yes. But that's the idea. That's the work. That's the work, right? Homeopathy is not just they figure out a remedy and give it to you. You do the work of that. You do the work of that 10-page form. It's like it's worse than the LSAT exam, and you got to fucking answer every question thoughtfully.
This is also one reason, why we have to use different tools with different people. Because one thing I learned, and this is like 14 years now practicing, is that when people are on a lot of medications, or they've been, which are most people, which are in the system, which is I hand over my power, give me a pill, fix this kind of attitude. You need to bridge them through a process really of being comfortable coming off all meds, and or sometimes they can't because they don't have an organ system. So then we have to work around things like that. But what I mean is to get out of that system and start to think about nutrition differently. So we use, a step of getting off the meds and going onto supplements. Then they realize that the supplements are corrective, then they don't need that anymore. Then they're supposed to carry it with their lifestyle and behaviors and attitudes and all these other things, right? And you take them there through this process where they realize their own power with their own health and the choices that they can make, right? But it can't just do this. It just is, it's ridiculous. You can't be on a medication that's poisoning for 20 years and then expect to come off of it and have a perfect situation. There's going to be work involved. You've been damaging yourself for 20 years, plus you had the original issue that was never dealt with. And wow, your body is incredible to the fact that you're still alive through that. And now it has a lot of healing to do and you want to support it, but doesn't necessarily mean you're going to wake up the next day and feel like you're 18 again with your everything put back together. I mean, and the other thing I was thinking about today, because a couple of people were asking about my facelift in a jar and how to stay young, and they don't like the wrinkles on their face and all this sort of stuff. And part of me just want to say, like, you know what? It's okay to get old. It's okay to age. It's okay to have lines on your face. It's okay to have evidence that you lived. It's okay to have laugh lines. It's okay. I like the little crow's feet that men get. Why do we have to feel like we're trapped in this ever youthful, let's always be a kid thing? This is not, we need to actually grow up and mature. I understand staying young. That's all how you behave and your spiritual sense and what you eat and how your regime is. That will slow your aging process. But, why is it wrong to become older? Sorry.
Well, debilitated and infirm and unable to walk or things like that, or having no energy, that's different than not a natural aging process.
Exactly.
There's so much working against us right now. The stress of the existence that we have, we're supposed to be inundated with convenience,
Mm-hmm.
but we're all slaves to this robot unless we
Oh,
really
it's
manage it.
button pushing. Yeah, it's just button pushing, really.
Do you mean they're getting their buttons pushed, or we're pushing buttons?
No, they make us push buttons. They make us take extra steps with things, like so there's a lot of time wasting in the convenience items that they present to us, right? Where we already know it could be perfectly convenient. It could be we already had all that. We have a Tesla coil that can make electricity go in straight lines. Okay, so give me a break. We already have free electricity from the air. So they present not what we actually have available. They present a gadget that appears to give us a convenience, but really it's the opposite. It's a time waster because there's all these buttons to always push. That's just an analogy for what they do to us, right? It's a 180 flip. They sell us safety, but it's the opposite. It's death. It's their way, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And the intensity of the communications. I mean, think about what it took to schedule a lunch date 25 years ago. You'd say, I'll meet you at Joe's Cafe at 5 o'clock on Thursday. And you'd be there. And now it's like 100 communications and text messages day of, leading into it. I'm 10 seconds late. I'm this, I'm that. The robot is eating a huge amount of energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the machine.
Merely to maintain it.
Yeah, exactly.
So knowing all this, right? What are the steps you recommend people go through to just detach a little bit and start to lead more natural lives? So I'd asked you about what are some basic steps people can take to return to a more natural state of being?
Yes. This is that's the root question, right? What can I do to get out of suffering? And ultimately, you have to take a hard look at your lifestyle and the choices that you're making and watch where the toxins are entering, excuse me, into your life. So are they coming through food? Are they coming through air? Where are they coming in? And that's where you have to stop the flooding of your body. It's like stopping a flood in your house. Plug all the leaks in your life. And that goes for energy leaks too. People or situations that are toxic to you, that are causing you distress, emotional distress. That leads to ill health also. So you have to look at all of your determinants in your lifestyle and assess them accordingly. Are there ones that make sense to change now? Are there ones that you have control over? Those are the ones that you change first. The ones that you don't feel like you have control over or that seems insurmountable at the moment, you just leave those for now. Don't become overwhelmed. Just take one step at a time. You look at the entire mountain and say, I got to be at the top. You're going to never start. So you have to just begin in steps and make better choices every day. And then that becomes new habit. And then once you've eradicated or eliminated as much of the toxicity, you think about how you can increase your nutrition, your absorption, your digestion, your assimilation of the things that you're inputting and are allowing into your body. And you try to enrich those things, make them as concentrated, potent, health balancing, and energy promoting as possible. And it's not about pleasure. Pleasure is another category. You can actually also increase your pleasure by eating right and having, toxins removed, and make, calculated, pleasurable choices that are actually health promoting. People think that if they give up their McDonald's or their Dairy Queen, they're not going to have any pleasure in their food or pleasure in their lifestyle, but it's not the case at all. You begin to cook more, you begin to get more intimate with your food. You care more about where it's coming from and who's growing it and what's going into it. You start to change the way you eat, you start to change the way you think. Then you start to understand that water is very powerful and water holds memory, and what's the water going into the food, and what if the water has chemicals in it, then what is that doing to my body when I'm mostly water? And you begin to, your thought form begins to change. Then you find your intuition and know, is this the type of diet and lifestyle that's right for me or not? Where do I live? My geographical location is going to change how much sunlight or biophotons I'm getting into my lifestyle, how much earthing I can do, how much deep breathing I can do outside, how much sun gazing I can do, and all of these other factors of good health, right? And then you continually strive to do it, because it's an art. It is. It's health is an art, and you are trying to get feedback. You're your own detective of your own body. See, there's gurus and there's teachers and there's healers, and that's fine. And that I see them as guides or directors. But ultimately, the goal is you become your own doctor, you become your own authority, and you learn to understand yourself to the point that you know what to do in all these situations. And you know when things are subtly off, and you catch them early before letting them go into disasters, where you might need a suppressive device to actually save your life, which is where the demons reside. They're like, you've been ignoring yourself. Enter, right? You don't want to get to that place. Even accidents can come from energetic chaos of your own being, right? And you have to learn to listen, whether it's the right time to go out on that motorbike or not, or to
turn left or turn right.
That's the art of it all, right? So there's a lot to be done, but it really starts with you making that decision that you care and love yourself enough, and you want to fill yourself up with that unconditional love. So you can host a child to feed them that they don't have parents and they need a dinner. Then you're overflowing in abundance so that you can gift other people. If you're not healthy, then you're the one pulling on other people, right? You're not able to have your cup overfloweth and then overflow other people's cups. And that, to me, is a worthy goal of life, is to become that abundance as much as you can.
What about meaning? I think this is a place where people are really aching, is the need for meaning that in many cases is unrecognized.
Yeah, it's a huge struggle. I personally get that one a lot, and it changes. I think, if you don't have a good spiritual barometer, it can be even more daunting. It's okay to not know as well. It's okay to be in those spaces, just accepting. That's where I end up with all of that. I accept that I might not feel that motivation today, or that desire, or I that will, or that inside of me to keep going, or whatever that motor is tired. I'm going to acknowledge that that's the most logical thing. That's where I'm at. I'm exhausted, or I'm tired, and that's okay. I'm okay. It's okay for me to be tired. It's okay for me to not be doing things 24/7. It's okay to not get back to that person. It's like I accept and I allow, and you have to go through a process of this integration. You can't be on the out when you're on the in integrating, So then when you're finally on that swing, that's when you start to get your mojo back. You get you feel that there's purpose. You feel there's something, there's a reason. You might not even know it, but you feel it, and you feel the motor charged again and moving you forward into what you're here to do. And you may not know until after.
I mean, even turning within, acknowledging an inner life is a crucial step. Which you could say regards feelings and motivation and sensing how you are, but that's all product of inner awareness.
All of it, the whole thing. Yeah. That's why there are monks who just sit in caves, because they know that the Maya is the illusion, and that they're the projection of the external reality is of their own making. And they choose to do that awareness work as deeply inside themselves as possible. And then there are people who want the external experience, or want to play in the illusion, And that's why I came to that conclusion, that people must enjoy or need or want the illusions. It serves them. The illusions bring them to the suffering, and the suffering brings them to the lessons, and they have to learn the lessons, and they're not learning it an easy way. So they're learning it a more uncomfortable way. And maybe that's the way that they'll see it, because we're not in their bodies. We don't know, right? We don't know.
Nor in their choices previously, or their karma, or whatever it is.
We don't know any of this. Yes.
You mentioned something about not knowing. I find that's one of the most powerful spiritual tools, is to be able to stand in the face of the unknown for a while and not have the answer.
Yeah. Be comfortable with it, especially if you have had perfectionism drilled into you or created into you, as I have. I do that on purpose, as a corrective action to the controlling, more perfectionist has to be a certain way. And being an artist and a perfectionist is also a problemo, because you have to be okay with it, maybe to your mind, feeling unfinished. I have a lot of works of art that to me don't feel finished, but I know that they are finished, and there's nothing more I can do.
Well, you need a theory of art. I mean, there's an expression that paintings are never done; they just stop in interesting places. As an editor, there is definitely right and wrong, but one of my mottos is there is such a thing as good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you can set it down for a while and let it be there for a while. I mean, and this is coming from a person who has probably reposted my chronology somewhere around 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just keep updating version after version after version, but still there is such a thing as good enough.
Yeah.
But it's the part about the unknown, I think, that is such an important thing for people who are on this plane of reality, because there are so many unknowns that we try to rush into with a false sense of clarity.
Mm-hmm. Very easy to do. Very easy to jump to a conclusion, to make a quick assessment like that. Yeah. Absolutely. I see it all the time. And just because there's a correlation, or just like, there's a lot of things that we assume, and the logic and reasoning and rationale has to go run through those filters. I do that as a habit now. The second that I make connections with things, I run it through a series of logical gambits to see if it passes the test. And I think that exercise, that practice, is a very good one for people to do.
So what's an example of that?
Like, I have a bunch of logical fallacy cards. I don't think I have them here, but that I'll go through on a regular basis, right? So I basically there's a connection, say, with, I don't know, we're looking into researching mud flood. And so you're making an association that the mud is there because there was a cataclysmic event, but then people want to relate it back to the Great Flood and Noah's Ark and this sort of stuff, right? So that's an extrapolation. You're trying to make extrapolations of data points or information, right, that you're trying to put together. But are there other possible explanations for the rationale? And so that's one of them, for example. That's one of the logical fallacies, is that I think it's Tukokay or something. There's one where it says that you think it's black and white, or there's the black and white fallacy. So you think it's just black and white when there's actually multiple answers that also could be true for that correlation, right? So this is what I mean. I run these things through the fallacies to see if they can hold water enough for them to continue on with the theory and work the theory in a little bit more, right? Because really we're all just scientists in the moment trying to figure out, as we awaken through lies, really, we see what all the lies are, and then we throw them to the side, and now we're trying to pull in truth. So you better be careful when you've thrown out a body of lies to that significance and you're trying to rebuild your truth. You're careful. And so if you use the logical fallacies as a good guide tool, as a filter, basically, then you can catch yourself in biases and mistakes a lot easier, because you do have to acknowledge that we all have our biases, and it's okay. It's okay, because we are who we are, and we're going to make mistakes based on biases. And so I think one of the most humbling things we can all do is accept our biases and own them, because that's where we come from. And then when we're in proper discourse or we're having debating, that we acknowledge that in ourselves. That would be, mature debaters would do that, right? They would acknowledge their biases. They might still stay, this is indeed what I believe right now, and that's fine, but they'll still acknowledge they may have a bias. They may have to look at that again later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that could be an important discipline.
Yeah.
I think. How do I know this? That's an important question.
Mm-hmm. How do I
know this? Why do I believe that?
Yeah, why?
What led me to that belief? Why do I think that there's 7 colors in the rainbow?
Yes.
For example, well, who shoved in indigo? Like, there's a history to this. Someone decided that there should be 7 colors in the rainbow. There's really probably a billion or so in that.
Yeah.
If you ever seen a rainbow, it doesn't like go from like red to orange to yellow to blue. It's like this beautiful gradient. But and I'm blessed to be a writer. I have to constantly question. Anytime I put something in writing, I have to ask myself, how do I know that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do I attribute that fact? This is uncomfortable territory for people, but it, I think, is a place where meaning enters. Very important place where meaning enters.
Yeah,
is to be looping back. So there are this logical fallacy cards. That's interesting. It never occurred to me to use those as a tool. I'm more the oblique strategies type, the Brian Eno tool, where there's 101 cards and you pick it out and it says switch instruments, clean the room, go out for lunch, stop doing this. And seemingly completely unrelated suggestions, but like, oh, switch instruments. Oh, let's see what happens. Then
I have these conversation cards that I got my daughter when she was really young, and they're just like a family conversation. Oh, what about this today? Or what's your favorite whatever? And so they're just all these conversation cards because, when you're little, you're trying to learn the art of conversation, and which it is an art, which most people don't have any of that artistic capability, but there is that too, right? So, how would you phrase that, or how would you ask that? Or isn't that an interesting discourse or something? And because everything's so tech and thrown at us at ones and zeros
and
now.
Scripted. You watch young people panic all the time when the conversation goes off script,
mm-hmm.
off the algorithm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Humans are not algorithmic. We learn by making these things that are mistakenly called mistakes. You have to bumble around. You have to. I'm learning how to ask people to give money to my journalism projects. People who know that I'm one of the best, people who have benefited profoundly from my work. There's still a method to doing it. I am committed to getting it wrong 1,000 times till I figure it out.
Yeah, and learning that sometimes there's a timing. And there's a patience, and that, to me, that's another test. And at least for me personally, the patience test, being a fast fire person, has always been presented to me. And I always know when I have to wait, even if it looks ridiculous that I'm waiting in a way, or I'll get messages that I just have to stop talking to that individual or not engage with that individual. And I actually don't even know really why, but I have to trust the system that I've built inside of myself to navigate my reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a feedback system, almost like a dowsing system that I've trained in myself. Mm-hmm. Some people can call it their gut feeling, some people do, whatever that is.
I think it's a little bit different maybe, but.
Yeah, it's different for different people, depending on your operating, how you operate, how you are wired, I guess, right?
Well, so, is gut feeling just fear? A lot of people think gut feel is fear. Mm-hmm. I mean, for example, slightly obliquely related, but you may be familiar with my presentations on the internet as a thing that basically is so intense that we have to cut off to not be completely submerged in the pain of the intensity of a central nervous system that blankets the entire planet, which is what we're living with right now, and light speed communication. And
Mhm.
I lost my original point there. Um,
Uh, well, I mean,
one step back, where was I? What was the point of departure?
well, we were talking about um,
Yes.
fallacy and mistakes is where as one of the launching points. Then we went on to I don't know. I'm so in the
Well,
moment.
the willingness to make mistakes is crucial. That's kind of ego defeating, right? Because the ego hates mistakes, right? Oh, I'm wrong. So you have to get over
Yeah.
that. The ego wants to know, so you have to embrace not knowing for a while.
Yes, and the
Um,
timing part. I mean, I was talking about timing and
ah,
waiting and patience.
yes. Okay. So what my slightly oblique point was, we are in the middle of this light speed communication nervous system that constantly is overwhelming us, and then the response to that is to numb out. So
Yeah, of
people are
course.
really numbed out by overexposure and all this technology, most of which they can't even handle.
Yes, it's
When
very
the
true.
when the COVID thing struck, there was an emotion delivered, and that was terror.
Mm.
And because it registered as a sensation, people believed it was true. And
Yeah.
that's not a true gut response. That is
No.
just being shocked with pain, thinking, oh, it's real because I'm feeling this pain.
Mm.
Ah, right.
Well, yeah, but also fear is root chakra. So really, the gut is more who you are. So it's more about if that's ego, but there's ego involved there. So if there, it depends. I guess that's what I was saying. It sort of depends on how you wired yourself to respond to information to find out if it's accurate or not, right? And anyway, second something comes, you must distill it, which means you have to wait anyway, or at least sleep on it, right? Because so say you get all this news and all this chaos has come. Well, you would train yourself to know that the media, first of all, wants to manipulate you. And so if they're trying to manipulate you with a bombardment, then the first thing you do, it's just like with the ego. The first thing you do is you step back because oh, my ego's got pulled in. Oh shit,
Right.
stop, stop the presses, right?
Except when you're
I,
punched in the stomach, like we all were.
well, that's true because then you're going to react, but that's okay. Then you react, but then you still have to stop, right? And reassess and pick up the pieces and see what really happened and pour the waters of consciousness over the whole thing and then recant maybe even from that. Go, oh, see, they're trying to fool us. I'm not going to let them do that to us. That's what's really happening. That's my true gut sense, or that's what I really am feeling. My first sense was reactionary. It wasn't my true sensation that is right, right? Different.
But let's split those apart, right? Because of the numbness problem, the narcosis problem, the fact that the threat registered any emotional sensation at all, I think impressed people with how real it all was.
Mm,
Hence, they retreated, went into their homes, locked themselves in, allowed the businesses to be shut down.
yeah.
Plenty of people still wearing masks outside my door right now. And in many ways, that shock of fear has not worn off of a great many people.
Yeah, you're right. It's almost like what they've done with their social engineering is, and I've seen and met these people, and I don't have any of these people as my friends, but people who are very addicted to drama, emotional drama,
Mm-hmm.
and all kinds of this chaos of emotion, right? And so they're not emotionally mature. Those ones are the most vulnerable to an emotional, smackdown like that, and
Mm-hmm.
will comply for certain because like you're saying, it feeds all of that. Now it froths it up and makes actually some part of their boring life exciting in a way because
Yes.
there's an
Well,
excitement factor. The
and
danger factor.
involve the danger factor, and then you're part of this now. All
Yeah.
the people who say, I had it. What did you have? Well, they describe
It.
hay fever. They describe what would have been called a cold in 2018. I had it. I'm part of this. So the internet makes involvement. So one of the games of the internet is that it creates involvement. Now we're involved now, right? We're in the robot now. We're involved now, but we're allowing a metalog to happen. We didn't
Mhm.
plan this conversation, really. I gave you a paragraph and said, here's a starting point. We're nowhere is
Yeah.
we've come hundreds of miles from that starting point. So we're allowing something spontaneous, non-scripted to occur. That's a very important part of the
Mhm.
solution to the crisis that we're in right now, I think, is allowing part of your life to be unscripted and spontaneous.
Yeah, to flow in a direction with that is guided, but it's not constricted, right? Because this everything wants to meander naturally, right? That's the way. So if you're like this, then there's not a lot of wiggle room there, and so you don't. This is also about experiencing in the moment, and if you want to have joy, then you have to be present. You have to take the joy in the moment. You don't get joy otherwise. You get joy only in that moment. And so you take it. So I take little joys. I, on purpose, as a practice, accept joys. So I'll say, this is joyful right now that I'm able to cook in my kitchen for my family, and to this is joy. I'm going to own this as joy. And now I'm choosing this as joy. I'm building it in as my structure, right?
Yep.
And people can focus on the negative in that way too, which is what they've been, told to do. And I do agree that us allowing flow is also modeling it and modeling flow, and that it's okay to relax enough to have your own thoughts expressed, and that they're ponderings, and that you're allowed to ponder and you're allowed to consider, and you're allowed to dream and have all that's as well. But the whole idea is to stay on track of what your real meaning is for here, what you're here to accomplish. When you're at the end, when you look back, to go, yes, I feel that this gift I was given of life, I've been honoring, and I have been using in a way that honors this existence in some manner,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have to be about busybody or making money or any of those things, of course, as you know, right? It can be the subtlest of things that are your biggest triumphs. And I think we're going to come through something really cataclysmic in a way, but also transformative in a lot of good ways as well, because of the tech age, in a sense, but also because we are going through this Kali Yuga transformation into the next phase of things. So we have to hold on to our panties as we go through another collapse of a civilization, which of course has its tells. When Rome fell, or when any empire falls, they have their exit tells in how society behaves and what is happening in the culture. And we have those signs now, so we can read the writing on the wall of this pattern and prepare ourselves for those changes.
Yep. To the extent possible. You freezing up a little bit on the. You're still talking.
Oh, my connection is unstable. The weather,
Yep.
it seems. Let me see.
Yeah, Kate, please note the time of that freeze up.
Am I back now?
Yes. Yep.
Sorry about that.
One of my yogas is stopping to hang out with every dog I pass on the street. And I have a real gift for connecting with dogs on the spot that can startle their owners a little bit, because I can just go right in with them and bond instantaneously. And so I do this going from canine to canine, and having real bursts of love and spontaneous friendship throughout my day.
I love that idea. That's wonderful.
But you have to not be shy or wonder what people think, and They're going to judge me for wanting to meet their dog, and I make them wait a little bit longer than they might have expected to wait. Maybe it's a minute or two. It's not anything in the realm of things. And some people love when just someone randomly spots their dog and wants to connect with it, and have a happy moment and give them attention that they may not even be giving their canine themselves. So you find your ways, I think, to connect with the pleasure of being, which I think is another way to say meaning.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a joy. I think I always separate joy and pleasure because they're different purposes. But I think I think there's joy there in your meaning, where you feel you can hold on to that. You can utilize that to motivate your motor, to make you feel the pull. The fuel comes in for you so that you can go forward into what you need to do, right? Because if you're demotivated and demoralized, then you allow yourself to be an open book to programming. So I choose to do my own. I take charge of my own vehicle, and everyone needs to take control of their own vehicle and play nice when they're driving around. Try not to crash into one another, but not allow for the autonomous driving of the handlers to take control of where you go and how you go. And that's what they've been trying to do in that analogy and in all kinds of ways. And it's because you're demoralized that you allow for that. So the correction is to take control of your vehicle and get your motor running again with your motivation and your fuel, which are those beautiful little joy moments of contemplation and awareness of what your gifts are, what you're here for. And then to keep riding that. So keep putting energy into that thought form, and then you will take back that control, and they have no say because of free will. And you're allowed to leave. They may not tell you that as a slave you're allowed to leave, but you are allowed to walk off the plantation at any point in time. And more are choosing to do this.
Yes, we're in a very important transitional moment in the history of humanity.
Absolutely.
And from the look of the astrology for the next 9 months, there's more coming.
Oh, I would imagine so.
So, between Pluto changing signs, that's a very important one. Pluto entering Aquarius will represent either a collective soul evolution or the takeover of the robot. And could be both going on simultaneously and kind of in parallel.
That's what I think. Yeah. I always felt there would be both. I always did, because, Dolores Cannons would speak, or others would speak about this division that's happening. And it's not about the communist division tactics. I'm not talking about that. I'm discussing just a split in the consciousness of those who are ready to walk the narrow path and to do this work, and those who are not. They say, I do not accept my vehicle. I would rather be driven. And those are the people who are going to go down the robot path. And for whatever reason, I don't pretend to understand the reasons for, again, like I said, I'm not in their bodies, and I don't know the decisions they make and the rationale. Well, we know it's not really rational, but why they're lost in illogical thinking and why they need to be lost in illogical thinking. We salute them for whatever they are trying to do, but we're not going to do that. And the thing is, where we draw the line is interference. So as long as we can coexist in that manner, then we'll be where we need to be, and we'll see how it goes or how long it lasts, even for the illogical.
Yes. And that would almost be a perfect world. It's the training to attack. I'm concerned that the disembodiment issue is often answered by attacking people as a means of self-learning, self-discovery. And it's why there's been so much psychic and physical violence in our time. I think.
Mhm.
That the
Yeah.
25 years of extreme disembodiment. Look, I mean, under electrical influences, it's been just nonstop war.
Yeah. That concerns me, that electrical electrical influences in tech concerns me. Um, I've been looking a little bit at some of the patents and things for that as well. And I don't like the idea that they can take over somebody's thought forms using, standing waves or electrical waves that implant their thought form into the brain waves. I think that's tech that should be outlawed. I think there's a lot of tech that needs to be outlawed, that being one of them. But they could try to make super soldiers, or they could trigger people into different emotional states using this type of tech, right?
Right.
So that's a concern, meaning if they trigger enough people doing experiments like that, they could cause a lot of problems, like probably in cities and these sorts of situations, right? I don't think they're going to be doing little bits here and there. They want to probably create chaos. But so I've been actually looking at a lot of these tech, trying to understand how valid they are, how realistic they are, given the fact that we have free will. So I think it's only going to be those who have given away, like I said, they are so demoralized, they don't have charge of their vehicle. So they are the vulnerable ones to that type of tech. While those of us who understand energy better and who have done this, I never allow any contracts of any of these energy situations to come into my world. It's not permitted. And I make those statements every day. So they don't touch those who will not allow it, because it's free will. It's a fundamental principle of this place. So we have to try to work with that as much as we can. I do as much as I can, to first of all, to test how much of it is true, how much of it's karma, how much of it interference can happen, how much is personal mistake, et cetera, et cetera. But these are some of the practice and contemplate as well, where that's going to go for them. But I don't feel like we're going to be the same level of susceptibility, that, again, fueling my theory that it's just going to go along two separate paths, the private and the public's going to go down to a very dark, weird place.
Yeah, we've seen the rehearsal.
Yeah.
We all lived through the drill.
Yeah.
Incredibly.
Yeah. I mean, they showed us this dystopian thing for them going into the virtual reality sort of escapism. That's your same escapism, I think, is, you kind of alluded to, where people want to numb themselves.
Well, they don't want to. It's the only thing you can do when suddenly your nervous system, which is supposed to end at the tip of your fingers,
Yeah.
or as far as your eye can see, naturally is suddenly surrounding. It's connected to the entire satellite and fiber optic network.
Mm.
That's overwhelming, and then that leads people to have to back off and amputate themselves.
It's amazing how much we've been able to adapt to half of this. I really am continually amazed.
That is also genuinely amazing. Yes.
Yeah, constantly. I mean, that's why I have to be in a sense of wonderment a lot of the times, and just be in awe that this is still continuing, despite what we have done to this place. Is just like we came in and just trashed the joint. Let's it's amazing. But we need to rehabilitate our world, and that's what we do, and that's why we start with ourselves, and that's why I teach the basic principles for people to do with their health, so that they can come to that place and then begin to be a steward once again for nature, for life.
Well, stewardship is a great principle to work with.
Yes.
Of whatever it might be. Whatever
Everything.
It might be.
Yes.
The canine realm, the forests, the children, knowledge, whatever. Your job is just to steward it.
Yeah. Curate it.
Amanda, thank you for your help generally, and you've been a very influential person in helping move society past this phase of the crisis we've lived through. I believe you and many others who have been involved have had an impact that would be much worse otherwise.
Thank you, Eric.
So some T cells kicked in and did their job, basically, if you believe in that. It's a metaphor. Good. All right. We'll make sure people can contact you. Anything you want connected to the program, we will send. Any natural photographs, horizontal, whatever you call it, landscape orientation would be nice.
Sure.
Less pose stuff, and we'll deliver this to Planet Waves viewers and listeners.
Awesome. Well, it was great chatting with you in our free flow style, and hopefully my lighting sorts out in your editing. Sorry about that.
This is a better camera.
Okay, well, I'll use it in the future. I've been testing lighting, cameras.
Far better. When you see the difference, you won't believe it.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Good.
Okay, well,
all right. Once again,
have a good one. Thanks, Eric.
Bless and bye for now.